Good afternoon. We welcome you to the August 12th, 2012 meeting of the General Obligation Bond Neighborhood and City Services Subcommittee. I hereby call this meeting to order. We have today, we've provided Spanish translation interpreters. Would you please introduce yourselves?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. My name is Elsie Duarte, and along with my colleague Mario Barajas, we will be serving as interpreters in today's meeting. I will now introduce myself to our Spanish-speaking audience. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Elsie Duarte y junto con mi colega Mario Barajas estaremos sirviéndoles como intérpretes en la reunión de hoy. Al momento de hacer un comentario público, de favor les pedimos que hable despacio, con claridad y deténgase después de cada pocas oraciones para interpretarle de la manera más completa posible. Gracias. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Right now, we're going to have, at this time, I would like to have the committee members and the city staff to introduce themselves. And what we'll do, we'll just start over my right, your left, as far as our committee members.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Jennifer Rouse. I'm currently the president of the Phoenix Blockwatch Advisory Board.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm Michael Brown, and I'm involved with the international organization called World Vision.
Michelle Dodds, formerly with the Historic Preservation Office.
My name is Abraham James, and I am the chair of the Library Advisory Board.
I'm Gigi George, Phoenix Historic Neighborhoods Coalition.
I'm Dan Osran. I'm with the Fireside at Desert Ridge Community Association.
Dan Clocky. I serve as the chair of the Historic Preservation Commission.
Thank you all. And the staff, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Rita Hamilton, city librarian.
Good afternoon, all. Joe Giudice, Public Works Director.
Good afternoon. I'm Helena Reuter, and I'm the Acting Historic Preservation Officer.
Good afternoon. Alan Stevenson, Deputy City Manager with the city.
Good afternoon. Paul Lee, Assistant City Attorney.
Good afternoon. I'm Amber Williamson, the City of Phoenix Budget Director.
Adam Miller, Special Project Administrator for the GeoBond Program. Good afternoon, everybody.
All right. Thank you very much. There will be a public comment period at the end of today's agenda, which may be up to 30 minutes in length, depending upon the number of speakers. The Arizona Open Meeting Law permits committee members to listen to the comments, but prohibit members from discussing or acting on the matter presented. Speakers will have up to 2 minutes to comment. However, prior to the start of the public comment period, I might specify a briefer duration based on the volume of speakers. If you are attending in person and would like to speak, you will need to sign up to speak at the kiosk located at the entrance to the council chambers before the call of the public item begins. For visual participants, registration to speak must be submitted 2 hours prior to the start of each meeting. Speakers will be called in the order received, beginning with virtual participants. Also, we have introductory remarks, and I see here. Our first agenda item is introductory remarks. Okay. Well, I will go through this. This is the city's first bond program since 2006, and there are countless capital needs throughout the city. City Council has directed the General Obligation Bond Committee to recommend a $50 million bond program to the City Council. Executive committees have asked that this subcommittee, with the identifying the most urgent needs related to the neighborhood and city services. Staff have provided a starting point through a capital needs study. Overall, prioritizing needs identified by staff exceeds the $500 million bond program total. So through this process, the subcommittee will need to avoid the growing in the total program that is ultimately recommended to the executive committee. The subcommittee will also be hearing from the members of the community who may have different opinions, priorities, as well as hearing from the ideas of the subcommittee members. To manage information, the staff will only provide a report on a new project concept at the direction of the subcommittee. As we hear from staff and the public on the needs, it will be important for the committee to bear in mind that we will not be able to address every need through this bond program. Conducted on regular basis going forward, the current vision is to conduct a $500 million bond program every 5 years. For this first bond program, many of the highest priorities will be rehabilitation, replacement of existing facilities, with the last bond program having occurred over 15 years ago. The city has significant deference maintenance needs. All right. The first thing that we will do is that we will appoint a new vice chair. I will, yes.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to forward a nomination, if I may.
Yes.
I would move to nominate Michelle Dodds as the vice chair of the committee, having the experience in historic preservation, neighborhoods, and planning. I think she'd be an excellent vice chair.
Okay. Ms. Dodge, would you accept this?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I would second the nomination.
Thank you. Ms. George? All right. We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Congratulations, Ms. Vice Chair.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great. All right. Our next agenda item is a staff presentation on the capital needs study. There will also be an opportunity for subcommittee members to discuss any project they believe are critical that are not in the capital needs study. I will turn the meeting over to the staff for the presentation. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman James. Welcome, members of the committee. We are happy to be here with you and share information from the capital needs study that has led to these items that we will discuss as a top tier in terms of the capital needs that have been identified via the study process. As the chairman mentioned, the city's not had a bond program since 2006, and so there are a lot of capital needs, and that's why, as the base part of this, staff has done a lot of work with a capital needs study and assessment to evaluate what are those needs so that we can begin this level of baseline discussion with you here as this subcommittee. We're thankful for your time volunteering with us for these 4 meetings that we are going to be with you on, and we appreciate everything that you're going to do to try and help make some tough decisions as you pare these items back and make a recommendation to the overall executive steering committee, who will go forward from there. With that, I'm going to introduce our first speaker here, Helena Reuter, and then we'll go to Joe Giudice, and then down to Rita Hamilton, and then we'll be here happy to answer any questions. With that, take it away, Helena.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. Let's make sure. All right, technical difficulties. It's a pleasure to be here to discuss the HP Historic Preservation General Bond Proposal. I'll be discussing 3 grant programs as well as 2 identified capital needs projects for the Orpheum Theater and Heritage Square. Not sure if I'm... I apologize. So established in 1985, the Historic Preservation Office is a division within Planning and Development. Our office works closely with the city's Historic Preservation Commission, which is a 9-member body made up of volunteers appointed by City Council to oversee historic preservation activities in Phoenix. One of the assigned responsibilities of the Historic Preservation Commission is to create a preservation plan. This plan, known as Preserve Phoenix, was adopted by City Council. Okay. In 2015 in conjunction with the city's general plan. And the preservation plan includes the following goals: protecting historic resources, developing, exploring preservation incentives, which is one of the reasons we're here today, developing community awareness, and promoting partnerships. One of the recommendations in the preservation plan was that the city complete a study of the economic impact of historic preservation. This study, called Preservation Phoenix Style, contains several key findings. One, that historic districts in the city have some of the highest density, are more walkable, and have direct access to public transit. That our heritage commercial areas hold the highest percentage of creative and knowledge worker jobs, as well as a high percentage of those in entertainment and recreation. Our heritage commercial areas include a greater percentage of minority-owned and legacy businesses, and that the adaptive reuse of historic buildings downtown has resulted in the creation of event venues, restaurants, residences, hotels, and bars, which draw people to a strong sense of place. The study also established that properties in historic districts maintain a higher property values than similar homes in non-designated neighborhoods, and that historic preservation and sustainability are closely linked. So with that, I'll segue into the proposal for grant funding for preservation activities related to designated residential properties. The Exterior Rehabilitation Program provides funds to encourage residents to maintain, repair, and sensitively rehabilitate historic homes, and to encourage reinvestment and revitalization in historic neighborhoods. The city reimburses owners on a 50-50 matching basis for pre-approved work. The minimum share for reimbursement is $5,000 and the maximum $20,000. And in exchange for the funding, the property owner agrees to sell to the city a conservation easement to protect the character of the property's exteriors. Here's just a couple of examples from past bond grant projects, from before and after photos of a few different properties. It's a largely burnt building that was basically entirely reconstructed. So approximately $3.8 million in matching grants have been approved since the program began in 1990, funding over 400 projects in 32 different historic districts. The demonstration project program provides property owners funding assistance for projects that rehabilitate the exteriors of historic commercial, multifamily, and/or institutional buildings. The program supports rehabilitation projects that retain historic building materials and features, reverse inappropriate alterations, reconstruct missing historic features, and return a building to its historic appearance. In this case, the minimum city match is $10,000, and in exchange for the funding, the property owner agrees to record a conservation easement to protect the exteriors, the length of which is determined by the amount of the total grant funding. I always think of the demonstration project as sort of like the showstopper projects, the ones that really take buildings from, you would barely know they were historic, and by the time you have amazing end results. Here's the Gold Spot Marketing Building, which now hosts Pita Jungle, coffee shop, some office space. The Dudar Day Motor Company on Van Buren, which is now the event center, the Van Buren. And then we've done a number of additional projects throughout the years. Dunbar School there is highlighted, but there's a number of other projects noted here. Okay, the final grant program would be the Warehouse and Threatened Building Program, which is to preserve downtown warehouses and other historic buildings, and much in the way of the demonstration project program. It also supports projects which rehabilitate building exteriors and reverse inappropriate alterations. A primary difference of this program is that the city match may cover up to 100% of exterior work as long as the owner can provide matching for interior work. Additionally, the funds of this program can be used by the city to acquire a property for the public benefit use, or also for later RFP for someone else to acquire the property and reuse it. Okay, just a couple of other examples from previous projects. The Arizona Hardware Supply Company warehouse, Aerial Sales Company, and the photo there of the Jones Montoya House, arguably the earliest remaining dwelling in the city of Phoenix. Okay, so we will now shift from rehabilitation funds that directly assist Phoenix private property owners to the proposed rehabilitation of two historically significant properties owned by the city of Phoenix. The Orpheum opened in 1929 as a movie palace, originally used for vaudeville acts as part of a nationwide Orpheum circuit. The property has historical significance as an outstanding example of Spanish colonial revival architecture with Moorish elements, and is the last remaining theater of its time. The property was listed in the National Register in 1985, on the Phoenix Historic Property Register in 1987, and then was upgraded to Phoenix Landmark status in 2004. It's a one-stage, multi-purpose theater and concert venue with a capacity of 1,365 seats, and hosts a variety of performances from Broadway at the Orpheum, dance and ballet performances, to multicultural community events and concerts. The theater hosts more than 150 annual performances and other special engagements. In 2018, an architectural assessment of the exterior condition of the theater was conducted. The project team of DWL Architects and Advanced Technologies Group assessed the condition of the architectural facade through visual and physical inspections of the exterior surfaces, along with a high-resolution 3D aerial mapping survey to create a baseline reference point. Overall, the building was found to be in good condition for its age, However, the study noted that items such as routine surface weathering and deterioration, as well as surface cracks, that would need to be monitored and addressed for future maintenance. Recommendations include the removal of the staining from contaminants, repointing of mortar and grout joints is needed, and repairing of cracks in the stucco and cast stone elements to restore the structural integrity and prevent water infiltration. So the scope would be to restore and preserve the architectural features and update exterior accent lighting, which would provide the benefit of preserving those character-defining elements of the historic building and maintaining as a one-of-a-kind theater in Phoenix. And here's just a few examples, photos of that study that demonstrate some areas needing improvement. Rear wall surface cracks and cracks in decorative cast stone balcony. Okay, and the final project is for Heritage Square. Heritage Square and Science Park is home to Arizona Science Center, market space, Rawson House, and a collection of other historic buildings that house restaurants and shops. Collectively, the Square and Science Park host 433,000 program attendees annually. Threatened with demolition in the 1970s, the city acquired Block 14 of the original Phoenix town site in 1974 and began a program of rehabilitation of the historic buildings. The historic square now includes Block 14 and a portion of Block 15 of the original Phoenix town site, and was listed in the Phoenix Historic Property in 1989 for its significance as holding the largest collection of residential buildings within the original Phoenix town site. Overall, the district includes 10 historic buildings dating from the late 1800s to 1920s, along with the 1970s era Lath House, which are all depicted on the map there. Proposed work at the Silva House includes floor repair, replacement in HVAC, the historic Teeter House Baird Machine Shop, which is otherwise known as Pizzeria Bianco, and Thomas House. Work includes electrical panel upgrades and floor repairs, and foundation and brick and mortar repair, as well as clay pipe plumbing replacement, would be completed throughout the park. All right, that concludes the historic preservation bond. I'm going to pass it over to Joe Judice with Public Works.
Thank you, Helena. Good afternoon. And thank you all for participating. You absolutely have a challenging task in front of you, so I can certainly appreciate that. The recession, and the chair did a great job of explaining the importance of the deferred maintenance that we're trying to address here through this bond program. And so the recession certainly led to a lot of deferred maintenance where important building systems, electrical systems, plumbing systems, fire life safety systems, elevator systems, things like that, were deferred. And so one of the strategies that we in Public Works have employed is utilizing a third-party engineering consulting firm to do a series of facility condition assessments. We haven't completely completed all of those throughout the number of facilities that we have in Public Works, but we have completed a fairly hefty percentage of those, and that very much will inform the programs that we're about to share with you this morning. And so there are 3 programs that we have in Public Works. First, a little bit about our Public Works staff. We like to be at work behind the scenes as much as possible. You'll see pictured here, there's work on roofs, in basements, in electrical closets, and things like that. There are the occasions where we are front and center. So, for example, these plexiglass installations that you have up is something we have done in the last couple of years, as well as at front service counters, things like that. But also maintaining all these critical building systems. We have about 1,200 or so buildings and properties throughout the city of Phoenix, citywide, that we're responsible for performing maintenance of. The first program that I want to share with you is related to compliance with the American with Disabilities Act. This is a $10 million program funded at about $2 million each year. Important to note that we collaborated with the Office of Equal Opportunity at the City of Phoenix to do site assessments at many of our properties in 2021, so fairly current, to identify our shortcomings, and that informs this program. One other thing to note is that many of the consultants we speak with that are experts in this field recommend that a multi-yeared investment program is the best approach to address ongoing ADA compliance needs. As I mentioned, or did not mention yet, the ADA standards were last updated in 2010. So those are the most current standards we're looking to achieve compliance with. I did mention the site evaluation that was conducted in 2021. And again, that those site evaluations do inform the program. Of note, not funding this program would obviously put us in a legal position where we wouldn't be in compliance with ADA law at several of our facilities, but more importantly, it would continue to present accessibility challenges to both residents and employees of the city. Just a few examples of some of the types of investments. ADA accessibility pathways would be one type of investment. There's also ramps. Here we have doors, so whether they're automatic doors or push-button ADA doors. And then here's an example of signage, as well as a non-compliant restroom, and then a compliant restroom in terms of the sinks. So these are the types of investments. There's a large variety and a large need across the city. Moving to the second program that I want to share with you today. This is what we refer to as City Service Center property improvements. Again, informed by those facility condition assessments I previously referenced. We have, this program is a $10 million program, again, funded at about $2 million each year of the bond program. Right now, the facility condition assessments identified about $40 million in outstanding need, so this would prioritize the most critical of those needs. The city service centers are field service operations, and so wanted to give you a little bit of insight as to where these are, because these are not necessarily public access facilities. These are used to dispatch services to support the city in a variety of ways. We have a Salt River Service Center, Okima Service Center, Glen Rosa Service Center, and then way up north, or more further north, used to be way up north, it's not way up north anymore, is it? Is our Union Hills Service Center. These facilities are all over 50 years of age, so they've obviously been in use for quite a number of years. And the facility condition assessments highlight that the deferred maintenance at these facilities is probably some of the most significant deferred maintenance that we're experiencing. This is to give you just a little bit of sense of what one of those facilities looks like. So it's in this yellow kind of shape. There's multiple buildings here, multiple operations. So for example, our solid waste, recycling, garbage collection, and code enforcement are located at each of our service centers. Our planning development department has staffing resources at these service centers. Our streets department has important and critical staffing resources and materials and supplies at these service centers. This particular service center, Glen Rosa, also houses the sign shop, which is where many of the city's street signs are manufactured. Water department dispatches services out of these locations, as well as some other locations that they have. We have fueling assets at each of these service centers to supply fuel to the large number of vehicles that work out of here, as well as fleet maintenance shop and facilities at these locations. So just wanted to give you a sense for the types of important work that's being done here and the types of departments. In terms of, again, the type of work It's pretty thematically the same across multiple of these programs, so whether it's plumbing repairs in this case, there's a lot of electrical repair or electric service panels. So this visual to the left represents kind of an older electrical service panel, and then to the right, a newer electrical service panel. And then a lot of the building and roofing systems is another area. Of course, monsoon season always points out to us where we have leaks that need to be repaired. And usually those are just little patches until we can get to a real true roof replacement. This is a roofing project combined with HVAC system improvements as well. And then the third and final program I want to review with you today is very similar to the service center program that I just reviewed, except this one is focused on our downtown city properties. So again, it's a $10 million program with $2 million per year in funding. And again, this is, these are the 7 major city facilities. So the only distinction here is, you know, these are obviously more vertical buildings, so, you know, elevator systems or other things that might be involved in vertical buildings might be a higher priority than they may be at some of the service center locations. These various facilities house up to 20 of our city departments. They are a base of operation for many of our city staff as well as customers, residents, and it's a work location for 6,000 employees. Just some examples of some of the deferred maintenance items that have been discovered that should have been obviously addressed before they got to this state. Here is a case of some corroded water lines. Here was a leak from a roof that got into an electrical room. An example of an updated electrical panel. And a crack in a drain line and corroded HVAC system lines, just to give you a little bit of a visual of some of the types of programs that would be invested through this. That completes a discussion of the 3 programs that the Public Works Department has to share with you today. I'm going to turn it over to our city librarian, Rita.
We are here today to outline identified capital needs and add 2 new library locations and expand one of our current branch libraries. Before I go into detail about the service impacts of Phoenix Public Library offers to our communities, we have updated cost estimates from the initial report because staff received additional library construction details resulting in these refined numbers. Phoenix Public Library has been a respected community institution in Phoenix since June of 1898. For almost 125 years, our system has expanded to include a flagship location in Central Phoenix, Burton Bar Central Library, and 16 library locations. Generations of Phoenicians rely on Phoenix Public Library for being able to check out materials, both in person and online. In a typical year, we circulate 10 to 12 million library items. We host approximately 4 million visits a year. As part of the visits to our libraries, we provide 700,000 hours of access to a computer and the internet. Free Wi-Fi is available inside each location and throughout our parking lots. And each summer, Phoenix Public Libraries also serve as cooling centers. Phoenix Public Library also provides career and college readiness through College Depot and Phoenix Works, critical early literacy programs such as summer reading, kindergarten boot camp, and story times, nutritious meals for kids with Kids Cafe, and access to local expertise and resources for those launching their own business. Library customers and the greater community can always find essential support with free access to trustworthy information and cultural experiences. Since 1998, Phoenix Public Library has routinely conducted an extensive 3-year strategic planning cycle. The process includes input from customers, library staff, partners, community organizations, community leaders, and overall library stakeholders. The library's objectives are to enrich and entertain with engaging programs that appeal to all ages and give voice to the diversity of our communities. Increase access by reducing barriers and making more library services available remotely or where the community congregates. Build a stronger community by increasing the school readiness and STEM skills of young children and teens, connecting community members to higher education resources, and helping people secure employment or start a business. And we strive to work smarter by utilizing technology to streamline our processes and leveraging community partners and other city departments to further our reach. Burton Bar Central Library, located at McDowell Road and Central Avenue, is 280,000 square feet of flexible space housing library functions across 5 levels. The 16 branch libraries are divided into 5 regions and grouped by size: regional, community, and neighborhood branches. Regional branches are largest at 20 to 30,000 square feet are Agave, Cesar Chavez, Cholla, Mesquite, and South Mountain Community Library. Community branches, those that are mid-sized at 13 to 16,000 square feet, are Desert Broom, Desert Sage, Ironwood, Juniper, and Palo Verde. And our 5 smallest libraries are 12,000 square feet or less. These neighborhood libraries are Acacia, Century, Harmon, Ocotillo, and Yucca. Our system has not expanded by adding any additional library locations in over 10 years. Our most recently added locations are Cesar Chavez Library, opened in 2007, Agave Library in 2009, and South Mountain Community Library, which is a joint library with South Mountain Community College, opened in 2011. Since 2011, Phoenix has become the 5th largest U.S. city with a population of 1.7 million and 17 libraries. By comparison, Philadelphia, the 6th largest city, has 53 libraries in their system, and San Antonio, the 7th largest city, has 31 libraries. For the GeoBond program, 2 new library locations were identified as part of the Phoenix Park's civic spaces to be designed and constructed on 2 currently vacant parcels, one at Deer Valley Drive and Tatum Boulevard, another at 91st Avenue and Lower Buckeye Road. A 10,000 square foot expansion of Yucca Library at 15th Avenue, just south of Christown Spectrum Mall, has also been identified. The Desert View Village, north of 101 and east of I-17, is one of the fastest growing areas in Phoenix. The City of Phoenix Desert View Village Character Report notes this area has a projected population growth of over 119,000 by 2030. At present, the closest library to this area, Mesquite Library, is almost 6 miles away at East Paradise Village Parkway and Tatum Boulevard. Mesquite Library is our busiest branch with 175,000 visitors in 2021-22. A new 13,000 square foot library is identified as part of Phoenix Park's Phase 1 of the Desert View Civic Space. This is located at East Deer Valley Drive and Tatum Boulevard. A new library here will offer access to free internet and other computer technologies, community meeting space, and 30,000 library materials to this growing population. The total project cost is $1.5 million coming from the collected impact fees. Once operational, this new library will increase Desert Ridge 11,000 by 2030. The 2 closest libraries serving this area are Cesar Chavez Library, over 7 miles away, at 35th Avenue and Baseline Road, and Desert Sage Library, 4 miles away, at 75th Avenue and Encanto Boulevard. With the addition of Loop 202 and ongoing I-10 West expansion, further residential and commercial development is sure to continue. A new 13,000 square foot library is identified as part of Phoenix Park's Phase 1 of the Estrella Village Civic Space. This is located at 91st Avenue and Lower Buckeye Road. A new library here will offer access to the free internet and other computer technologies, community meeting spaces, critical early literacy programs such as children's story times and kindergarten boot camp, workforce-related programs, and over 30,000 library materials to the growing population of Estrella Village. The total project cost is estimated to be over $11 million, with the GEO bond funding providing over $8.5 million and $3 million coming from collected impact fees. Once operational, a new library location within the Estrella Village Civic Space will increase Estrella residents' access to critical information and services, and for Cesar Chavez and Desert Sage Library customers, wait times and access to library materials and programs would improve. The estimated annual operating cost is approximately $857,000. Or we could do a larger sized 20,000 square foot library could be considered. An additional 7,000 square feet would offer more public computers, a larger collection of items to check out, and a larger meeting room and program space. This would bring the total cost up to almost $17 million with the GEO Bond Fund programming, and almost $14 million and $3 million coming from the collected impact fees. The projected annual operating cost would be $1.2 million. Yucca Library, which first opened in June of 1969, making it 53 years old, is located on 15th Avenue, just south of Christown Spectrum Mall. Currently categorized as a neighborhood library, Yucca is a 10,000 square foot facility which regularly experiences heavy foot traffic and a high demand for access to computers, Wi-Fi, library programs, and library materials. Yucca is often our fifth busiest library, behind much larger libraries such as Mesquite, which is twice as big. Yucca is accessible by the Central Phoenix Valley Metro rail line. With Valley Metro's Northwest Extension Phase 2 project and Central Phoenix's ongoing population surge, we anticipate the increasing levels of library users at Yucca to continue. An expansion of Yucca Library by 10,000 square feet will double the current size to 20,000 and significantly enhance the visitor experience to Yucca. We will be able to improve services by adding more public computers, expanding meeting and studying room space, and increasing the library's collection of materials and reducing wait times for those materials. The total estimated cost is $5.5 million. Once operational, an expansion of Yucca Library would have an estimated annual operating cost of approximately $1.28 million. Thank you for your attention and support of our libraries. I will turn this back over to Deputy City Manager Alan Stevenson.
Thank you, Rita. As we transition into a discussion and answering any questions that the committee may have, I think one final point that I would like to make is that we have put forward this recommendation, this area of top tier ones for the committee to consider, so that you guys have the launching off point based upon the capital needs study and making sure that we give you information of where those critical needs are as you evaluate the various items. One of the other points I'd really like to emphasize is the Public Works Department and the way they have established their items. It's for programs, as you saw, and it really is to address a lot of critical needs that also have impacts to other areas within the city. And so, for example, there are buildings that the city owns that the city leases to nonprofits for art and other items. And so things that are being discussed in some of those other potential funding categories as other subcommittees could be included for ADA-type improvements within an ADA-type program. And so while it may not sound as nice when you're talking about public works as libraries or historic preservation, they are really critical, and there is a big need for all those things, and it impacts a lot of different things, not just the city staff itself in terms of what would be done there with that money. So I just wanted to put that out there, and then, Mr. Chairman, we're happy to answer any questions that you or committee members may have.
Thank you. I really appreciate the presentation. Before I open it up to our subcommittee members, there were a couple of members that showed up, and I wanted to give them the opportunity to introduce themselves, starting from my right, your left. Yes, please.
Hi, thank you, Chairman. My name is Stephanie Smith, and I am working at Access in their housing program, and I want to apologize for my tardiness. I will leave home earlier next time.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am Eva Olivas. I'm the Executive Director of Phoenix Revitalization Corporation. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we've all introduced ourselves,
Okay.
Chairman.
All right, great. All right, well, I will now begin to open this up with the subcommittee members. You have comments or any discussions that you would like to bring forth? Now is the time to do it. Yes, Ms. George.
Ms. Hamilton, I didn't get down which library is 4 miles away from Australia's civic space.
You find that one.
Thank you.
So it was the Desert Sage Library.
What's that location?
It's far west. It's very far west.
I can probably tell that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I have a few questions.
Yes, please.
Mr. Lee, have we done a financial legal assessment of the ADA risk that affects the City of Phoenix based on the Public Works ADA request?
Mr. Chairman, Member Osran, I may have to defer that question to Joe, who may have worked with our departments on assessing the legal risk of all the ADA issues.
Thank you, Chairman, Member Daniel Osserman. Did I say that correctly? Sorry. Without my glasses on. Hey, people butcher my last name all the time, so. We have not done a legal evaluation. What we have done is worked with our Office of our Equal Opportunity Office to evaluate where we know that we have ADA requirements under the law. So the ADA law has changed over time and continues to change. There may be future changes. And so the expectation from the federal government is that cities and organizations are making an effort to address those as they move forward. It's not as though it has to be in immediate compliance today, and it's that you're making investments over time to improve your facilities as these ever-changing requirements come forward, that you're making those improvements. So when we do projects in a city building, there's an ADA review, and if we're doing a restroom project, for example, then code compliance would be part of that project. This would be a program that's very specifically targeted to just identify and tackle some of these ADA needs that we know exist.
Thank you. If it's okay, Mr. Chair, I'd like to continue.
Yes, please.
With some questions. Do we reserve, thinking about the deferred maintenance that we've had, do we reserve out of the budget for capital improvements, out of the normal city budget for capital improvements? And is that also considered part of this, or is this a fully supplemental or replacement for that reserve if we do?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair, subcommittee members. We, through some operating funds, we don't necessarily have, I wouldn't say, a reserve fund where we're doing a set-aside per se, but through regular annual operating expenses, we have a major and minor maintenance program where we're making some improvements. So, for example, you know, since there hasn't been a bond program since 2006, some fire life safety issues that have come up over the years, we have identified funding to address the most critical and absolute necessary needs. So we do have some capital reserve, capital funding that we do out of the operating budget. It is insufficient, obviously, to address these major needs that have crept up over the years since that program. Amber, if I didn't satisfactorily answer that, you feel free to jump in.
Thank you. Committee members, there's roughly $13 million that's in the capital improvement pay-as-you-go operating budget in the general fund to do major maintenance. So as Joe indicated, it isn't sufficient to cover the extensive deferred maintenance that's occurred pretty much since the Great Recession. So the general fund does have a commitment of that amount in it, but it's not, as I mentioned, sufficient to cover the need.
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Olivas.
Thank you. I do have to say that I feel Public Works are the heroes, the unsung heroes. That department, I feel, is a department that flies under the radar and does so much for the city and does not get the credit it truly deserves. But I do have the same type of question in that if this was supported, then what is sustainability for the future? Would it be something you're coming back for every bond, or how are you going to integrate these costs into annual operating? I think it's kind of the question he was asking, so I had that same question. So I don't know if you wanted to answer further. I did hear your answer to him, so I'm hoping that the future will be that these expenses, these costs that are really important with regard to the disability and accessibility, that they're integrated in our annual operating budget for improvements.
So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Olivas, let me start off, and then perhaps Mr. Goudis or Ms. Amber can address from there. So I think the first thing I want to emphasize is that when we are talking about the ADA items as they are coming forward here in this discussion, those are for retrofitting existing city buildings. And so, hopefully for those and the other items that as that maintenance is done, the city is always looking to make sure that those investments are giving us the most bang for the buck, so we don't have to come back for more maintenance in terms of future bond requests. However, staff can't guarantee that because we have a number of buildings and those have varying age and varying repairs that will be needed. So I would anticipate that there's always going to be some component of those ones coming forward as part of the bonds, but it probably won't be as significant because we've had such a long time period of deferred where the city manager has laid out a program to come do this every 5 years so that we can stay on top of these items, so that I think those will be much smaller in the future.
And I had a second question. As it relates to libraries, can you tell me the proposed library for the north side of town, the Desert View, I believe it was, and also the library in the, I think, Levine area, southwest area? What are the closest resources to them, library resources to them? Is it
Mesquite
Yucca?
Library.
Would it be Yucca or the
Yes.
one at Metro Center, probably, right?
Well, Cholla is Metro Center.
Okay, so, but you're proposing to build.
It's, the one we're proposing north is at Desert Ridge.
Right. So the closest, and then the one in Southwest is the closest one to that community on Central Avenue and Southern?
No, it's at 75th Avenue and Encanto Boulevard.
And Encanto, okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to answer her question.
Yeah.
And Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Olivas, the closest one to the new proposed Desert View one is around Paradise Valley Mall. So it's
That's
Paradise Parkway.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Clocky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just 2 points of clarification. One for the historic preservation funds, there's sort of the 3 pots of funds, and then there are the 2 proposed projects. The funds for those 2 proposed projects, though, don't come out of the 3 pots of funds. Those are additional funds on top of the 3 pots?
Chair, Member Clocky, yes, that is correct. They would be distinct funding programs.
And the second point, Mr. Chair, for the library, the new library buildings, are the funds there also covering all the sort of books and technology and all that to fill them as well?
Yes, that is correct. The budget does cover all that.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Brown.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Again, back to the ADA, Public Works. Trying to grasp the $2 million a year, and ADA program's been around for quite some time, and you're talking about retrofitting. Trying to grapple with what's the percentage of these buildings? I mean, to what extent are we speaking to the need to retrofit? I mean, it should be, my understanding, already meeting those basic standards, correct? So how do you ascertain the need of funding? To what extent?
Thank you, Chair, Member Brown. So as I mentioned, we have 1,200 properties we're managing directly. Then you have other city-owned facilities like the cultural facilities that the city owns. So there's a number of buildings out there. I think it's accurate to say that many of them have ADA compliant items, but there are also a significant need of upgrades necessary. So whether those are ramps or restroom improvements or accessibility pathways, there's a variety of those needs. The assessments done with our Equal Opportunity Office, I think, is what we would refer to guide those investments, and how we would prioritize those would be based on their guidance and collective work with us. There's a number of facilities and public access issues and city employee access issues would be the focal point.
And this goes beyond the standard Phoenix city budget then?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And may I ask one more question? Yes. Regarding the theater and Heritage Center, just to understand clearly, these have some revenue streams, correct? They're actually, there's some sales from the theater, et cetera. And I'm trying to kind of grapple, understand the need to retrofit, but what do they contribute to that? I mean, they're not sustaining their own maintenance.
Mr. Chairman and Member Brown, if you give us just a minute, we're going to get staff to answer that question who have oversight of that area. And then we'll get back with you on that in just a second.
All right, thank you.
Get it?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up to your question. I've asked staff to check it. We should have a report we could maybe make available to the committee in terms of this ADA assessment, if it's of interest. But I'm verifying whether that exists, and if it does, then we can do that. And that's something we can address either at the next meeting, or if I have that answer by the end of the meeting, I'll certainly advise.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, We're joined by Mr. John Chan, who is the director of our convention center and oversees some of the other buildings we're talking about here.
Mr. Chair and members of the subcommittee, to answer your question, Mr. Brown, the Orphan Theater is a rental facility, so we do receive rental income from operating that facility. However, though, in addition to these capital needs, there are ongoing maintenance costs to maintain the building, to purchase theatrical audio equipment. So there are other expenses. This is perhaps one of the largest big-ticket capital needs that was unfunded, and so that's why we're requesting through this bond program.
If I could follow up on Mr. Brown's question.
Yes, please.
Is it possible to offset those funds with additional charges to people who use Orpheum and the heritage facilities, or are we already over market value in what we charge for those?
That's a great question. We'd be happy to kind of bring back to the subcommittee a breakdown of the revenues versus the expenses and look at the different categories. We'd be happy to come back to the subcommittee with that information.
Yes, Ms. Dodge, Vice Chair.
It's just a quick question on the future item for the Dupa Adobe, which is listed on the Phoenix Historic Property Register as a future item. I believe that the Parks Department did some sort of assessment for the need for some stabilization. And so I was, typically the grant funds are for private property, as was mentioned earlier, but I just want to make sure there wouldn't be anything that precludes, if the Historic Preservation Commission recommends and City Council approves, and say that the need is more urgent than 5 to 10 years out. Is there a way for an application to be made for one of those grants? I guess it would be warehouse threatened buildings.
Chair and Vice Chair Dodds, I'm not sure the answer to that. I probably, if you'll give me a second, I will confer with the Principal Planner, Kevin Waite, who has the most tenure in terms of grant funding in our office.
Yes. Members of the committee, are there other questions? While they confer, we're happy to.
Yes, Ms. George.
It's a broad category overall for this subcommittee, so we've got lots of different staff to answer items for you here. We got all the experts here. So.
Well, Kevin's up there now. I might as well hold on my question.
Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, this is Kevin Waite out of our Historic Preservation Office, for those of you that don't know him.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Regarding Ms. Dodd's question, yeah, it's possible that grant funds could be offered to a city-owned building. Generally, the funds are reserved for private properties, and we typically receive a conservation easement in exchange for that grant funding. But there have been times in the past, previous bond programs from 1989, 2001, 2006, where some of that money was allocated for city-owned buildings. So I don't know what the wish would be in the future from city management, but it's something that has happened in the past. We do have Mr. Diaz from the Parks Department here who can speak to perhaps the assessment that was done on the Dupa Montgomery Adobe and some of the needs that it currently has.
Mr. Chair, Vice Chair Dodds, thank you. That facility was evaluated back in, let me look at the exact year, in 2020, by Jeff Swan, who is a landscape architect who specializes in historic facilities. Some of the issues associated with the facility include the roof. It has some repairs done to it. There was a concrete slurry that was placed on top of that facility, which has contributed to the weight that's associated with the adobe block. And so there are some issues associated with the adobe block. There also was some repairs done to the north side of the facility where some sheetrock was installed and some door frames and things like that that are not historic. And so those need to be removed as we rehabilitate the facility and turn it back into a historic facility. But some of the biggest issues we're having is just the weather, just the impact of the weather on the south side of the adobe block, and it's destroying the integrity of the facility. So that's where our concerns. The cost in order just to rehabilitate the facility, and this is back in 2020, was $118,000 for a full renovation. It's right around $182,000.
Thank you.
Yes. Ms. Olivas.
I have another question. Was there any consideration for the units at Henson Village that the city set aside for historic preservation? Those were the units that are directly north of the senior tower and adjacent to Dunbar School.
I think historic preservation will probably have to answer that question.
I believe those properties are owned by parks, though? Are they owned by parks or housing?
Are you talking about the red brick buildings?
The red brick buildings that were formerly Henson projects.
Okay, yes. Yeah. So those facilities were not mentioned or discussed that I know of.
Ms. George?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was so intent on listening to that. Probably another call for Kevin White here. As you know, I've talked to a lot of people about being on the bond committee, and a question arose about the Norton House, which is near and dear to my heart on 15th Avenue. And Vince Murray, noted historian, had said to me when I mentioned that I was interested in the Norton House, he said, isn't Phoenix the CLG, the Certified Local Government, and wouldn't there be some matching funds in that?
So, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner George, I think that if we're having questions about other items that the committee may want to be considered and talking about funding for those, that's a discussion that at the end the chair is going to lead and ask for some input from you guys on what things might you want staff to come back next time to talk specifics about. And so to the extent, Ms. George, that you're wanting to start talking about why were other things not evaluated, I think that's really a question for next time.
That was not the question. It's just, I know that the Norton House wasn't evaluated, and there was a study on the Norton House done by Swan back in 2012. And so the Norton House is a city-owned property, so perhaps we could think about that later on. But the question from Vince Murray was, isn't Phoenix part of a CLG, and maybe that would offer matching funds? I don't know. I'm just asking.
Mr. Chair, Ms. George, I can answer that. Yes, City of Phoenix is a certified local government. When it comes to historic preservation, we can pursue certified local government grants. These are federal pass-through grants that are passed through the State Historic Preservation Office to the cities. The CLG grants are generally limited to non-bricks and mortar projects, such as preparing National Register nominations, doing historic property surveys, that sort of thing. There are opportunities, though, perhaps for matching funds through the State Heritage Fund grant. and perhaps some other funding sources available, through the National Trust and other options that might be out there.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the subcommittee?
I have one. Oh, Mr. Brown, please.
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Hamilton, I know you spoke a bit about the impact that libraries have to community lives. Have there been any studies that we follow in the city of Phoenix that discuss the economic impact for libraries in their communities as well?
Councilperson, the commissioner, and Abraham James there, thank you. I don't know of one. We haven't had a study like that I know of in our history, actually, so.
I don't know if we can direct such a study. I don't know what our abilities are here, but if we're talking about it as a cost center, but there's some sort of economic generation activity to it as well, I think it'd be important to understand that balance.
Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. It's kind of in line with the query just made in regard to the historical heritage, preservation. This is happening across the U.S. As it happens, though, there's generally a distortion of class, right? You improve these areas, and then there's a higher class of people moving into these areas, and then that's that challenge. And then I'm looking at neighborhoods and services, and whereby if money becomes jeopardy, that libraries are great centers of intersect, where people really cross paths with other people that normally would not, and there are learning centers. And so I'm just wanting to express, the balance of building up more of community with our resources. And libraries do it perhaps better than anyone because it's open, it's easy access, there's a learning opportunity. So as you mentioned, economic study would be great, as well as, just the thought of you're improving these properties in inner city, but there's a transition happening with communities. And so how do we make that intersect that we need in the United States society right now for people to start just having a more comfortable, open environment, and the best way we can maximize those funds to do that?
Ms. Olivas?
Yes, thank you. I have two statements, one question, two statements. So did you do projections on usage, facility usage for the libraries in both sections of town? And then I think that the libraries are much more than libraries, and I'm not sure if you have kind of a menu of all of the things that occur in the library. And I am extraordinarily lucky to work very closely with Harmon Library. So the amazing things that that particular branch manager does for our community are way beyond what people traditionally perceive a library to be. And so I was wondering if you might be able to provide us with kind of a menu of all the things that are occurring in the library, so that people can see kind of really a broader picture of just books. Not that books aren't the most critical reason to go to a library, but that would be something I would like to see. But the usage, I think, is really important to understand exactly how many people a year we anticipate going to those two different facilities.
I believe that would be something that we can do for you, yes. Right. And we can get those numbers. Chair, we'll get that.
Great. Any other questions or comments from the subcommittee members? No? Okay. Now we will go into the public comment period. Okay. Yes, Ms. George? Yes.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Before we go into the public comment period, which I believe will be the last portion of this meeting, I promised someone I would read this bit of information into the record because I was asked to. I received a call last night from a friend asking me to add to the list for consideration, and I understand that other people have been contacted, the list for consideration, Phoenix Theater for ADA improvements. I said the committee was going to study ADA, but only for city-owned buildings. The conversation then proceeded along the lines that Phoenix Theater perhaps wanted more than just a remodel for ADA, but wanted to add a structure. I attempted to explain it was the committee's responsibility to cut, not add. I wanted to go into that perhaps this request would be better handled by the Arts and Culture Subcommittee, but the caller only wanted my promise that I would be sure to bring this up. And I've done it, and thank you for listening. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. George. Okay. Now we will go into the public comment period. We now open our public comment period. We have 4 speakers registered today, including 1 virtual participant wishing to speak. I will give each speaker 2 minutes. We will start with the virtual participant. When your name is called, your audio device will be unmuted, and you will begin your remark. At the conclusion of the virtual speaker, we will invite in-person attendees to the podium to address the committee. I will now ask the city attorney to explain the rules of the public comment in our GO Bond Committee meeting. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Lee, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the public may speak to comment on general obligation bond program. The City Code requires speakers to present their comments in a respectful and courteous manner. Profane language, threats, or personal attacks on members of the public, council members, committee members, or staff are not allowed. A person who violates these rules will lose the opportunity to continue to speak. The committee and staff cannot discuss or comment on matters related to pending claims or litigation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Okay, I will ask the staff to call the speakers.
Our first virtual speaker is Stacia Hurst, followed by Ashley Bragg in the upper council chambers. Stacia, are you on the line?
Yes, hello, can you hear me? This is Stacia.
Yes, we can. You may proceed.
Hello, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, Neighborhood City Services, subcommittee members, and staff. My comment is regarding libraries. I am pro-library branch, and future capital needs and capital needs studies of adding new library branches, but not at the expense of maintaining the regular, resources in library branches that we currently have. I would encourage you to list for consideration the Acacia Library located on East Townley and North 8th Street. This is in District 3. This branch does not offer enough resources for our residents to succeed. There's a great need for increased operation of hours, resources like study rooms and community meeting rooms, computer access and technology amenities, reading literacy services, access to library materials, and seed library expansion programs. The maintenance and repairs are greatly needed at this location, and I would encourage everybody to keep that in mind when you present new $5 million projects for new library branches. I would just encourage you to justify how you can't properly repair and maintain and update the current libraries, and not only in District 3, but equally throughout all districts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ashley Bragg in the upper council chambers, followed by Matthew Schaefer.
Thank you. My name is Ashley Bragg, and I am a community liaison and community partner within the South Phoenix area. I'm here today to speak to the matter of the Parks and Recs project, specifically that of South Phoenix Youth Center. This center is one of 2 centers providing active services and resources for the teen population. And one of the biggest initiatives within this center is to provide tools, resources, and services to these students to acclimate their transition from childhood to adulthood. Regardless of their backgrounds, they hope to inspire them and bring out their full potential. So with that, I'm asking, because as of this morning, there has not been a specific capital needs study completed for this particular center. So as a community member, I'm requesting a capital needs assessment be completed to understand the actual needs of this center so that we can continue to provide these services and resources. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, members of the committee, we'll talk with the speaker. That particular item falls under the Parks and Recreation Subcommittee, which is Monday at 1 p.m. will be that subcommittee, but we'll get with her to get some information to her about that, just so you guys know.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stevenson.
Our next speaker is Matthew Schaefer, followed by Michael Barnard in the upper council chambers.
Hi, I'm Matt Schaefer. I'm up here. I am the managing director at the Phoenix Theater Company, which is a nonprofit that operates the Phoenix Theater, which is a city-owned facility. As you can see, I have mobility issues, and I have worked for the theater for 16 years. In that time, I can't say that, I will say, the audience section of our theater is ADA compliant and has had some ADA work done in my 16 years. The backstage portions where I work, where our artists work, where our artists created, have not been so lucky, at least in the time that I've been there, with the exception of one bathroom that has been brought up to code in the backstage area, but it's on the second floor that I actually can't even get to. So a bit of irony there. The backstage areas are not accessible to people with mobility issues, which means that we can't have artists with disabilities in our shows, and we can't have we do a summer camp, which is the most accessible summer camp to people with non-mobility disabilities in the entire state, but we can't extend that to people with mobility disabilities because they can't get to our rehearsal hall, which is where the primary camp takes place. And so we did bring this up with the Office of Arts and Culture, and they did a study, and the study unfortunately came out one day after they had to provide the bond projects. And so we are sort of in this limbo area between this subcommittee and the Arts and Culture subcommittee, and have made this presentation to both at this point. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
Our final speaker is Michael Barnard in the upper council chambers.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Barnard. I'm the producing artistic director for the Phoenix Theater Company. I want to thank you all for allowing us to speak to you all today. Thank you. The Phoenix Theater Company is entering into its 103rd season. We were opened in 1920 here, and we do about 500 performances a year on 3 different stages. We are the biggest employer of artists in our state, and we have one of the largest and most inclusive programs for children, including children with autism, Down syndrome, ADHD, and other neurological and emotional challenges. We pride ourselves in a great sense of hiring diversity and equality, but one area of inclusivity is our ADA inabilities. As Matt Schaefer just spoke, our front of house, our public spaces are ADA compliant, but Our backstage areas, because the building was built in 1951, the ADA codes of that time are not the ADA codes of this time. And our city engineers took a look at our building and basically said, your only option is to build a facility that is ADA for rehearsal space and for offices and staff, that it is financially not feasible to retrofit ADA compliance within the 1951 building. We serve probably upwards of 300,000 patrons and artists, and these professional, and we've also been able to start to garner national attention. And in order for us to grow and build, we have to comply to the ADA requirements to complete our inclusivity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for asking. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Chair James, that was our final speaker today.
Thank you very much. Okay. This concludes our public comment period. Thanks to all that participated virtually or in person today. As we move to committee members' future agenda items, I want to ensure that members in any organization requesting project consideration for inclusion by this committee needs to make sure that all minimum the following criteria are met. 1, must not already be covered under the scope of any existing project or program. 2, must result in city-owned assets. 3, must have complete scope and source of estimated costs, including operation costs, if city impact. 4, must demonstrate all urgent needs, i.e. high risk or deferring to a future bond program. 5, must demonstrate the ability to expand approved funding within a 5-year period. Based on today's discussion, do any subcommittee members have requests for the next meeting agenda specifically? Okay, all right. I hear none. All right. Our next meeting schedule is for August 26th.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman James, real quick for the committee's benefit and the public, I wanted to clarify that when Ms. Hamilton was talking about the library items, she had mentioned that there were additional information gathered about the costs that she relayed and talked about what those costs would be in terms of the Desert View Village went from $4 million initially up to $10.3 million, and she talked about Estrella. But in the Yucca one, she had talked about it, but the numbers on the PowerPoint did not get updated.
Okay.
And so I just want to clarify that with the additional information, the Yucca Library to do what was originally envisioned is as $10.6 million compared to 5.5.
Okay. Are there any other items that we should be aware of? Okay.
So, Chairman James, members of the committee, I think if there are other items that the committee members wish to have us look at and bring information back for the next meeting, that's something that we would like to get. It's not a agenda item because it was under the public comment section, but if any of you have concerns about those items that you want us to study up and bring back, now's the time to let staff know what those may be.
Yes, Ms. Olivas.
Thank you. I would be very interested, well, I have to actually confirm who owns the Henson Village units that they set aside to preserve for historical reasons. I'm not sure if it's housing or if it's parks, so I kind of need to know that before I can see what I ask you. So,
Ms. Olivas, we can provide you that information. We believe it's the housing department, but we will confirm, and then we can have further discussions with you on it.
so then I would wonder if any questions about that would go to the Housing Bond Committee, or because this was about, and I believe it's designated historic, I believe, would that fall into this committee because historic preservation is here? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I think we do, and let us do some research and have discussion, and then we can report back to the committee where it would sit.
Right. Obviously, my concern is that those units were set aside for historical reasons, and since Hope 6 opened in 2007, almost zero has occurred at that site, which makes it 15 years of just sitting there in some cases. So, okay. Thank you.
Any more comments from the subcommittee members? Any more comments from the staff?
Mr. Chair, I don't know if it was captured, but if there's a study that we would, as a city, get behind about the positive economic impact of the library branch, that would be helpful information as well.
Committee member and Chairman James, because of the time associated with this, we won't be able to do any kind of full-blown economic analysis. The study for historic preservation that was referenced was a year and a half or so effort, so we will put together what we can find readily available and be able to share that with you in a couple of weeks, and hopefully that will answer your questions.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a newly created study. It could be something we could, if there's one out there that we could leverage, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Our next meeting is scheduled for August 26th. Subcommittee members, please notify staff in advance if you have conflicts with this meeting date. Okay? I really appreciate the staff as well as the members of our subcommittee, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
We want to again thank all of our partners who have made today possible, but particularly the students who power the future of Phoenix.